Hello, everybody. This is episode number 9 of the For the Fans podcast. I'm Justin Melillo, Kevin McAdams, alongside Kevin. What's going on tonight?
I've been building a computer desk for about in the last 2 days, 5.5 hours. I'm sunburnt from Sunday because I didn't put on any sunscreen lotion.
Ooh.
I'm I guess I'm just really, really tired. I have the next couple days off because I knew I would be from work because I always take a couple days off after a weekend like Daytona. But I thought this weekend was really good, and I'm excited to talk about it tonight.
I am also excited to talk about it because we had some interesting things go on over the weekend. Wish I could have been there. Happy that you were there. You're there every year though,
Yep.
and I do feel bad for you though because of the weather that went on because you didn't know when their racing was going to be. There was a lot of delays, and ultimately though, for what we did get, I felt like eh, I felt like it was really good. But we'll get to that in a second. Um, I'm as far as I'm concerned, I'm actually doing pretty decent, even though I'm kind of, I don't know, I'm feeling a little distracted right now. I got my cousin over, and he's upstairs with the dogs, so the dogs probably, the barks are probably coming through on the microphone, and
I can't hear anything yet, so
well, that's a good thing. We've had Jarvis a couple weeks. We don't need Maddie on here either, so um, we'll try to go through the episode without that. And I've been, as I was telling you beforehand, I've been trying to catch up on Stranger Things because episode or the third season came out. So that's pretty much all I've been doing today besides sleeping. So I'm ready and raring to go and ready to talk about this Daytona weekend. We had Xfinity and we had Cup, and both races had surprise winners. I felt like.
well, I mean, if you I don't know if you actually watched the Xfinity race, but man, being at the track, Ross was the clear favorite from the get-go. He led pretty much start to finish here and there. I mean, he bounced back and just like any plate race, people would get in the lead and run a few laps. But man, he was the guy to beat just because of how aggressive he was the entire race. The dude threw some of the most insane blocks and some of the most aggressive blocks I've ever seen at a plate race. I mean, things weren't even happening for the lead, and here comes a run from the guy behind him, and he swings up to the top of the wall, and the whole crowd, every single time he did it, was just going nuts. He was definitely the fan favorite just because he's from Florida, and it really showed that he was there to win. And man, Kaulig Racing, I don't know how you could draw it up any better than running 1, 2, 3. We'll get to what happened maybe later, but 1, 2, 3 coming to the line, and they win not only their first race, but they do it in really really cool fashion and run 1, 2, 3 at the Firecracker 250.
It was impressive for sure because Kaulig Racing has never found themselves in victory lane, and to do it in the fashion that they did, Ross in front, uh, Justin Haley coming home second, and AJ Allmendinger, he crossed the line in third. Um, Essentially a 1, 2, 3 finish, and you got to be really happy for them because they led a majority of the race. Ross led 49 of the 100 laps, which is essentially half of the race. And then AJ Allmendinger led 33 of the 100 laps. So add them together, that's pretty much your 82 laps right there. If my math, yeah, 82 laps. And then Justin Haley also led for a little bit. He led 4 laps. That's 86 of 100 laps. Kaulig Racing led that race. And yeah, Ross's blocks, insane. It was before we got to the end where Tyler Reddick had his issues. I felt like it was going to come down to those two.
I agree.
Ross had he had the advantage of having his teammates up there for the majority of the race, but Reddick wasn't going to be easily taken down. He was also up there throwing some pretty aggressive blocks as well. when he was in the lead. He only led 6 laps, but the 6 laps that he led were some of the most insane laps as well. So just the race, like I said, there was a lot of delays over the weekend. This one did get delayed a little bit, which allowed me to get home from work and sit on my couch and watch the entire thing from start to finish, which was pretty cool because I wasn't expecting to watch more than about 30 laps because of my work schedule. But you were in the stands for it, and definitely had to been a heck of a moment when Ross runs over to the start finish line with the watermelon and just absolutely destroys it on the start finish line.
Yeah, it was well worth it. I mean, I think it was about a 2 hour delay. I mean, I've gone to Daytona since I was 4 or 5 years old, and I know what to expect with these weather delays. I know it's pretty common that if they're not going to get the race in, it's because of rain, and if they're going to get it in, it's because it's 2 hours later because of rain, which is what happened on Xfinity. And it was really nice because man, he's so fun to watch win. And he's so elated and he's so ecstatic and he's so thrilled. And just this local watermelon farmer from Florida takes it and wins. And it's just out of nowhere, he finds a watermelon. And it's really cool. I post some pictures on my Facebook and on my Instagram of him doing the burnouts right there in front of me. He comes running from his car after talking to Rutledge and runs all the way to the finish line, and he's getting the crowd hyped up, and he slams the watermelon, and it's just like, and then he takes a piece of it and he eats a bunch of it and he throws it, and it's just craziness after him winning. But man, what a race. We had everything you could have asked for. You had essentially an underdog dominate the race. You had an entire team from start to finish, dominate the race, but all at the same time, we had 18 lead changes. I mean, they would go back and forth over and over and over. You had Reddick leading, you had Allgaier leading, you had all the Kaulig guys going back and forth. It's not like they were always riding around and riding side by side or straight back and forth. They were battling for the lead amongst themselves a lot of the race. And one thing I wanted to mention, Timmy Hill during that race, one of the cooler schemes, it was actually a painted car. It wasn't wrapped like 98% of the field. He was up there in the top 5. So we had a really, really cool race with a lot of storylines and a lot of good finishes by guys we're not used to seeing up front. Stephen Light finished 5th for Johnny Davis. It was one of those things where it was a normal Daytona race because you had the big one and you had that single file fest for a little bit, but then they got really, really dicey and really, really racy. And then you come out with probably the hottest driver in amongst the top 3 series as far as popularity, and Ross Chastain winning. It was truly a great night for the sport, and it was fun for me to be there and witness it all.
I've got 2 points that I'd like to make. One of them being that we had touched upon it before. We said that Kaulig Racing had essentially a 1-2-3 finish with their 3 cars. Ross crossed the line first, Justin crossed the line second, and AJ crossed the line in third. Unfortunately for AJ, his car was found to be, I think the term was it didn't hold a vacuum. The engine compartment didn't hold a vacuum in the post-race teardown, which that would allow for more air to get to the essential parts, which and essentially would give him more horsepower, which would make sense to why he was able to make some of the moves he was able to make at the end of the race. I'm not saying at all whatsoever that they did that intentionally, because AJ was involved in the big one. So something could have happened in that situation that knocked something loose. Unfortunately, it was enough to disqualify him from his 3rd place finish. The thing with that is that AJ was the stage 2 winner, but his disqualification means that everybody moves up a position. And that brings me to my second point, which is someone we talked about last week. The only person to leave Daytona with a playoff point this week is Michael Annett. He won the race earlier in the season. Unfortunately, he was caught up in the big one. He was right. He was essentially the catalyst of the big one, where there was a move later in the race, and he kind of didn't go for it, and Christopher Bell was expecting him to go for it, and the two made contact, and Annett goes spinning and collecting a bunch of other people, and Bell gets off, and he ends up with a third place finish, which is ironic because Bell was disqualified from a third place finish last week. But Michael Annett, yeah, he making moves. He ended up second in the stage, but because of AJ's disqualification, he moves up and he collects the stage win. The other stage was won by Ross, and of course the race was won by Ross. So those are 6 playoff points that are just they don't happen because Ross is not collecting points in Xfinity Series, he's collecting in the Truck Series. So even though he didn't get the finish that he either, you would say, deserved or expected, Michael Annett, with his 25th place finish, collected 22 points and a playoff point, the only person to collect a playoff point at Daytona in the Xfinity Series.
So essentially, the highest honor of the race was for Michael Annett because he earned a playoff point for the playoffs, and we've seen these races and these elimination races come down to 1 point. So I mean, that could be the difference. That literally could be the difference between him maybe going from the round of 12 to the round of 8, or even the round of 8 to the round of 4. We'll obviously see. But that's a really cool, once again, like you mentioned, unfortunate for Allmendinger and for Kaulig not to go 1, 2, 3. They go 1, 2, and 30, 38. But still, a great weekend for them. But Michael Annett, hey, gets a nice little consolation prize as of Saturday, and realizes, hey, I got an extra point for the playoffs in 2019. So that's pretty cool. Man, like I said, what a race. What a good race. I really enjoyed the Xfinity race. They've kind of messed with the package a little bit, to my dislike. They added like a bumper flare on the front end to kind of get more push away from the cars, to kind of stop the tandem drafting. It still doesn't work, and they still have to have that rule. But I did enjoy the race a lot because they pretty much went 100% balls to the wall the entire night, and it really made for a great show. And unfortunately, no fireworks. I was actually looking forward to seeing if they did fireworks on Xfinity night. They still don't do that yet, but I thought, okay, that's fine. We'll go to Saturday night, and we'll watch some fireworks, and we'll watch a 400 miler. And that didn't happen either, but we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Well, I mean, not to jump ahead, but I would say that there were some fireworks during the Cup race. They didn't happen on Saturday night, but we'll get to that in a second. The last point I did want to make is that the drivers made that race. Absolutely 100%. The package, who cares about the package? Who cares about the whatever rules that they had in place? That was all the drivers. That was all, every single driver in that field making insane, crazy moves that maybe they would think better of doing in any other situation. But Ross was throwing insane blocks. Reddick was throwing insane blocks. Bell was super aggressive trying to get to the front because he really didn't have any teammates up there. I mean, I'm just looking at the top 10. Bell was third, and the next highest Toyota finisher was Matt Mills, who drives for BJ McLeod. Matt Mills, Vinnie Miller, Stephen Parsons, 10th, 11th, 12th for the Toyota camp. You have to go all the way back to 18th place to find Bell's true teammate, Riley Herbst, and then the third car on that team, Brandon Jones, he was collected in an earlier accident. He actually retired 24 laps before the end of the race. So Toyota really didn't have a lot of teammates up there, but Bell was making sure that he was going to be up there for the end, and he made a lot of aggressive moves. Austin Cindric, he was involved in an incident earlier in the race. He made a lot of aggressive moves. I could talk about every single driver in the field and say how they made aggressive moves because it's true. And that's why we had such a great event on Friday night with the Xfinity Series drivers. Ross Chastain, he was either gonna bring home the steering wheel or bring home the checkered flag, and he ended up with the checkered flag. He ended up with the smashed watermelon on the start finish line. Definitely a night to remember for him. Hometown win for him, and I couldn't be more happy with the product that we got. Definitely a big jump from what happened in February.
I think they figured that out at Talladega, that you have to be aggressive with this package, just because, uh, man, February sucked. That
Yeah,
was one of the
dude.
most boring races I've ever seen in person, and I've been to a lot of boring races. Um, but I think they're realizing now that they have to be really aggressive and uh, and get the job done. And unfortunately, I still don't like the fact that they have a smaller spoiler. I think that's what caused the Caesar Buccarella wreck earlier in the race that took out a lot of good drivers. And I don't know why they continue to do it. I think they should be. It's just so weird to me that their logic is to take away some really essential pieces of downforce to keep the car stable, because you've got cars spinning in front of the pack and causing wrecks, but that's somehow better than cars pushing each other with a stable car. Because I mean, there's only been a couple wrecks that have been directly caused because of tandem racing. I still don't understand why they're so scared of it, especially at this point. They don't care about it in Cup, and they can pretty much not do it how they used to, but they can take a guy and shove him to the front, and it's not a big deal. It's just really bizarre to me that they still care immensely about keeping these guys off each other's bumpers in these lower series. It's just really strange to me.
Yeah, I feel like the rule is kind of outlived itself. I feel like it was a big overreaction to the big wreck that happened there a couple of years ago with Larson flying into the fence. I don't think that it was such a once in a lifetime type of situation that happened there. I mean, you look a couple years later, and Austin Dillon was flying into the fence, and they weren't doing tandem draft at that time, and that was in Cup Series, completely different package. So the opportunity exists at those speeds no matter what. So it was definitely refreshing to see that even if there was a little bit of tandeming going on, which I mean I feel like it happens anyway, even in the slightest, that NASCAR didn't jump the gun and penalize anybody this race for it. So, but yeah, either way, whether there was tandem drafting or not, the race itself, fantastic race, and it was a great precursor to what we saw on what was supposed to be Saturday night. But unfortunately, Mother Nature had other ideas.
Yeah, it was annoying for me. I went to the racetrack on Saturday thinking that I would be able to see a race. I thought they were going to be able to get it in. Maybe a little bit later, just similar to like Xfinity, 10 p.m., 11 p.m. start max. But apparently, there's some kind of ordinance that I was not aware of, where they have to get the race started by 11:30, or else they have to basically delay it. And the rain pretty much stopped around 9:30, 10 o'clock, and I guess they didn't think that. They called it really early. They called it around 8:15 that night, and they said, "All right, we're going to race at 1," which I thought was also a little bit bizarre. But apparently, they pretty much didn't want to clash against the Women's World Cup, which, as as a TV executive, I can understand. You don't want to go after what's probably going to be the number one watched event in the country on Sunday, but it pretty much screwed up NASCAR's whole entire schedule, because they get the race started late. They get the race started around 1, like 1:02, 1:03 p.m., so right around 1 o'clock. and they get about 120 laps in, 125 laps in, and at this point, the biggest thing that I can even like remember about everything was the fact that we couldn't go back to green because of a lightning strike policy that they've had to institute. I think it's because of insurance. They couldn't get the race going again, and then they would call the drivers to their cars, and then another lightning strike would hit, and we're talking about over about 45 minutes to an hour. So the race could have been finished at this point. But there's lightning in the area, but the fans don't even care. Like they told us to clear this track, clear the grandstands. Not a single person is leaving because they're like, we just want to watch this race. We don't care. We understand the risks. We just want to see this race. We wanted to see it to the end, and they didn't finish it. They decided to wait and wait and wait, and then the rains came, and then they continued to wait and wait and wait, and then they finally call it after about an hour of raining. And it was just it. I think it took away a lot from the actual race, which I thought was amazing. If we're talking about if that was an advertised distance of 300 miles, that was a fantastic 300-mile race. But we're not talking about a 300-mile race. We're talking about a 400-mile race that should have been finished probably around 1:32 o'clock, and instead they started it around 1 because of ratings and because of NBC and because they didn't want to clash with this and they didn't want to do that. And it's just, I don't know, from a logistics perspective, I thought it was an epic failure across all facets, because they could have easily gotten this race in. They should know better than to fight Mother Nature on this stuff. They should try to work within the parameters of Florida weather, which is you either get it in between 11 and 3 or you do it after 8. And guess what? They tried to go in between and it didn't work.
So the lightning policy, it was instituted a couple of years ago after a incident at Pocono Raceway where a fan had unfortunately passed away after being struck by lightning. So NASCAR.
So that was off the premises. That was technically off the premises of the racetrack. That was in their parking lot, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was in the parking lot of the racetrack, but regardless, that was the reason why the lightning policy was instituted. The lightning policy states that if a lightning strike happens within 8 miles of the track, they go on a clock. It's a lightning clock. It's 30 minutes. The clock has to run out before any more racing can continue. The lightning strike, and it was so bizarre, this whole situation. So the big one happens. It's big. You got Austin Dillon and Clint Boyer making contact at the very front of the field, and they wipe out pretty much everybody. Kurt Busch scoots by. He's got the lead. He's clearly got the lead. William Byron gets by. Jimmy Johnson gets by, and a few others get by. And you've got now I'd say about less than 10 cars that don't have much damage that are going to...
6.
Yes.
It was a lot. It was a lot of cars involved.
6 to 10 cars, I'd say, that would still be competitive going forward. So the pit's open, and pretty much everybody but Kurt Busch that's competitive goes in and takes some service. You also had guys like Landon Castle. You had Justin Haley, JJ Yaley. They all stayed out with Kurt Busch as well, because they're thinking weather's like right around the track. If it just starts raining, we're going to get like our best career finish right here. The rains don't come, and they clean up the track from the big one. It's I'd say about 8 laps later at this point, and they give the field one to go. And Matt McCall, who's the crew chief for Kurt Busch, he had already made up his mind. They were going to stay out until NASCAR gave the one to go, because they had to pit. They weren't going to make it much longer after the green flag. That would completely take them out of, being able to win the race if it went caution free from there. So they had to pit if they got the one to go. So NASCAR gave the one to go. Bush comes in, Castle comes in, a bunch of others come in. Justin Haley stays out. Haley, they what do they got to lose? They're gonna get probably last place anyway at this point. It doesn't matter if they pit or don't pit. What a fantastic move, because on the backstretch of the one to go lap, a lightning strike occurs, and I think they said it was like 7.4 miles away from the track,
Oh
just
my
within the
God.
radius. And NASCAR's like, nope, we can't go. Put the caution back out. We got to bring everybody down. We got to put this lightning clock on. The lightning clock goes on, like you said, runs down. They're a little bit of rain had come, so they were waiting to dry the track a little bit in a couple of the corners. They're just about to get everybody back in the car. Lightning comes again. 30-minute clock again. And it was surreal watching it, because they could have, like you said, they could have finished it before any real rain had come and ruined any chance of not being able to finish it. And you got this kid. It's his third career NASCAR Monster Energy Cup Series start. And he's in a car that has... They don't have the finishes like the other cars around them. They don't have the money like the other cars around them. They're in their first year. They bought the Furniture Row charter, Spire Motorsports, and they're honestly, all they're out there to do is just collect a paycheck, and try to make some profit. They're not out there to win these races, but somehow, some way, Justin Haley is the leader during this delay, and they finally call it, and it's like, what? Who is this? Like, we know who Justin Haley is, because he's been screwed so many times
Right.
out of a possible win. And last year at Daytona, he got penalized for going below the yellow line. So it was almost like he was almost owed this one. But I mean, it does nothing for him in the Cup Series, because he's not running for points. It would have been a fantastic win for him in like the Xfinity Series if that would have happened. But I mean, this team wasn't supposed to win, and yet they walked out of Daytona Beach with the trophy. And everybody I've talked to, like, everybody's happy, but everybody's like scratching their heads, like, how did this happen?
It I saw a lot of people talking about it on Twitter. And I don't know. I think it's just people trying to write stories for their own volition and to push their own agenda. But people were saying that it was because of strategy, that he was in the back the entire time. Dave Moody. Um, there's people that are like, oh, this was their idea the whole time. Just wait for the big one, and then they would race. I mean, they stayed out. They stayed out with one to go when the fuel window was about another 10, 15 laps before they had to pit. They knew what they were doing. Shame on NASCAR for even like going one to green. And I mean, obviously they have this policy. I think that's a pretty. I've never seen lightning travel 7.5 miles, 8 miles from where it forms to where it strikes. I've never heard that before. If it was like maybe 2 miles or 3 miles, I can maybe understand if we're talking about a radius standpoint, but 8 miles is ridiculous. And it's just a weird situation, like you said, because Spire Motorsports is basically a premium motorsports car, with a Toyota on top of it. You
He
got
was a Chevrolet. That was a
is it
Chevrolet.
Chevrolet?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's pretty
Um,
much a premium motorsports car, but go on.
I guess I thought it was Toyota because it has the 77 font from the Furniture Row guys. Anyway, so it's a Chevy premium car essentially, owned by Spire Motorsports. They basically took out a bank loan of $6 million to get this charter, pay for it, and then flip it. Like you said, they're just making a paycheck. It's a cash grab. So they stay out. You have Matt McCall making a normal pit call, calling the leader in because, oh, we're gonna go green here. I got to get my guy fuel. I got to get him set up for the last 30 laps or so of this race so he can go for the win. And here comes a lightning strike all the way down in South Daytona and way down, way out of the way, in my opinion. And they have to pause the race, and then they try to get going again, and here comes another lightning strike. And here comes the part that I think, and we're not even talking about the race. We'll talk about the race in a little bit because I have some things to talk about, uh, as far as like the runs and stuff and how great the racing was. But the rain finally shows up, and I'm thinking, all right, it's raining. They're not gonna call. They're just gonna call it, get it over with. This has gone on long enough. As a fan, I was ready to go home. I had stuff to do that night. We have FTF on Sunday. I wanted to run that. I'm just at this point. I'm sick of being at the track. I've been there 3 long, wet days. I'm ready to go, but they don't. They keep waiting. They keep waiting, and then there's this idea, and it started popping up on social media as I was thinking about it, and I started thinking they don't want Justin Haley to win this race. They want to go green again. They do not want a team who's basically using NASCAR's flawed charter system to make money off of, for their own best interests. And it's working for them because they're not building the fastest cars. They're building cars that are 3 and 4 seconds off pace. They're not going for wins. They're basically a start and park team that putters around for 400, 500 miles with the intention of not racing for the win or even racing for a top 25 finish. And then they're in the right place at the right time after a huge wreck that basically takes out 20 cars in the top 25. They end up like fourth or fifth after the caution, and then everyone that normally would pits, and then here comes Kurt Busch thinking, all right, got to get back on track, and then they throw the caution. It's just like I mentioned before, it's all just a mess. I know you're gonna have to blurt it out, but that is just a mess. What NASCAR did here. I mean, I'm happy for Haley. I'm with you on the fact that I think this is retribution for what happened to him last year. I was about as mad as I could ever be for a guy I don't really like that much when they took that win away from him. But it's just a really sour way to end the week, and I, you got to feel for Kurt because he didn't do anything wrong. He was in the lead when the wreck happened. He was probably going to win the race if they didn't take the one to green and they just called it and say, all right, we're gonna wait this thing out until the weather goes away. But that's not what happened, and we have Justin Haley as the first winner since 2001 in his third start. It's just a weird, really bizarre week and a really bizarre way to end. And one thing that I noticed that, I mean, it didn't even seem like Justin Haley was that thrilled. I mean, you would think a guy who just won his first race would be jumping up and down thrilled, but he seemed like he knew what happened. He didn't deserve it, and you could see it. You really could.
I can't take anything away from Justin Haley. I can't take anything away from Spire Motorsports. They were there just like everybody else. They showed up under the guidelines to race, and they they were taking advantage, like you said, of the flawed charter system. I hate the charters. Absolutely. I cannot stand them. I cannot stand the premise of them. I cannot stand any anything whatsoever. Spire Motorsports would not exist if the charters did not exist. That's the only reason that Spire Motorsports even is in NASCAR, because they saw an opportunity to make money, and you can't blame them. That's a fantastic, like, if anybody has that kind of money that they can throw around to try and make a profit off of it, you can't take anything away from them on that. They had no intentions of going out there to win the race on Sunday, originally on Saturday night, but on Sunday. They had no intention of going out there to win that race. They were just trying to get the best possible finish that they could with the least amount of money that they could possibly put into it to try and make the biggest profit that they could leaving Daytona, as they have every other race this season leading up to this event. It was just a fluke call, and Mother Nature saying, hey, we owe NASCAR owes Justin Haley one. snap of the fingers, and voila, Justin Haley is a Cup Series winner, and he it's got to be one of the most unlikely and downright insane ways to end an official NASCAR race. I'm the fact that we're still talking about it on Tuesday, and people are still going to be talking about it leading up until Kentucky Speedway. It's such a polarizing win that you can't blame anybody for it but NASCAR. This was NASCAR's, like, everything that NASCAR has done leading up to this moment is the reason that Justin Haley's a winner. It wasn't the weather. It wasn't it was the weather, but it wasn't, if the charters don't exist, Justin Haley's not in this race and able to make that decision is what I'm trying to say. And basically, I wish they would rethink the charters. Last year at Homestead, I had the opportunity to ask NASCAR President Steve Phelps a question during a media roundtable, and I asked, are the charters, like, are you getting what you thought you were going to get out of the charters? Like, can they be better? Do you have ideas on how they could be better? Because I honestly wanted to know. Nobody was talking about it at that time, but it's always on my mind. It's always on my mind because I can't think of anything else but how stupid it is that 36 cars are guaranteed to start because they have a special slip of paper from NASCAR that says you're an official charter team. Like, it just, the whole premise of the charter system, that the way that they handed them out, how could they not have given one to the Wood brothers when they initially came out? Yeah, they have one now through a partnership with Go Fast Racing, but they technically the Wood brothers still don't even own a charter to their own name. And that the whole way that this whole thing came down from Rob Kaufman, his brainchild, for him to make money, like, it boils my blood talking about the charter system, and I cannot stand it. And I feel so bad for Justin Haley because he's actually a talented race car driver, and he's in this situation where maybe this win might hurt him more than it helps him going forward in his career. And it really sucks to say that, but it's probably true because so many people are going to down talk this victory, which it's a victory. It's a NASCAR victory. It's an official win. I can't stand it.
Well, I mean, I'll say this, and Rob Kaufman can come fight me. He's an absolute scumbag. He's used NASCAR as a means to recover from his efforts at NWR and create this charter system. And I think he was also the founder of the RTA, basically just trying to recoup his money lost from the debacle at MWR after the whole itchy arm incident at Richmond with Clint Boyer and Truex. I think the charter has been an absolute, just another. God, NASCAR sucks, man. It's
Sad.
It's just like they just keep doing so many things that they're just shooting themselves in the foot. Like we've gone from, man, like I remember back in 2000. I hate to be a nostalgia guy, but man, I remember going back to like 2007, 2008 when they had 58 guys running for the 500. They had guys like 47, 50 cars every single week vying for a spot in the Cup Series. You had 43 guys running every single week. Now, man, we're lucky to get 35. We're lucky to get 37. Like, it's like, what is going on? Why is this happening? And it's because the amount of money that they're getting in return, if you're not a charter, is next to nothing. You're pretty much operating on a loss unless you're a charter. And if you're Spire Motorsports, it's actually a for-profit system. So you've got these whole, there's just these huge issues that not only I take with the way it's functioning, but they basically have put themselves in a position where, and I understand what the positive outlook would have been for this. 36 really strong teams. Basically, I don't know why they keep trying to do this. It's not working, but they wanted it to be all right. We got 36 franchises, we got 36 teams, and they're all going to be competitive, and you don't know what's going to happen. They're all going to be vying for top fives and top tens and maybe even wins. But instead, we've got way less competitive cars than we've ever had, regardless of what other people think. The same guys are winning. The same guys are winning every single week, minus this crazy incident. And we've got about 10 less cars on track. And I think everyone knows how bad the charter system is at face value. A lot of people don't even really know what it is. But the people that have somewhat of an idea of it obviously have strong opinions on it like we do. I think it's a joke. I think, like we both mentioned, it's Rob Kaufman just trying to recoup his money. But we've got this whole situation. We've got Justin Haley winning. And I disagree with you on the fact that I don't think this is going to hurt Justin Haley's credibility as a driver. I don't think it's going to hurt him. It might have a small temporary black eye, like, oh, you're the guy that won the race after they called it with one to go, and then you're on a team that basically is a Ponzi scheme to make money off of NASCAR's charter system. Cool. I just don't think it's going to be an issue long term. I think this one's actually going to be pretty forgettable after about 2 or 3 weeks.
I hope
Uh,
so.
it's just one of those things where it really sucks because there's so many things that could have prevented this. I think they could have ran it Saturday night late, like they did in 2015, like they did in 2005. I think they could have ran it regardless of this whole competition with ratings. I don't care about ratings. I care about watching an entire race. They could have ran it at they could have even ran it at 12:30. The match was long over from a competitive standpoint at that point. They could have ran at 12:30, and that would have been plenty of time to get an extra 30 laps in with this issue with the whole race. It's just like, man, how many times does NASCAR have to just 100% shoot themselves in the foot? Because for once, they did something right with this package. Like, this racing is so good and it's so fun to watch because they're getting runs everywhere. And guess what? And we'll talk about it in a little bit. Blocking does not work like it used to, like the last 5 or 6 years where someone would get a run and then here comes Keselowski or Johnson or Dale Jr. killing the run. It's like, all right, they got to try again. And the same guy's just blocking the field for 30, 40, 50 laps and no one's passing. They're passing each other. And the only thing we're talking about is this crazy scenario where Justin Haley wins because of lightning. It's like, what? Why? Why are we talking about this? It's just like, I don't know. I'm just frustrated, I guess.
I really do want to talk about the racing because the racing, like you said, was very, very good for Daytona. It was a
Probably the
very
best race in about 10 years. It was really good.
it was fantastic. The racing that we did get. It wasn't just one person leading a line and then another line got a run and they just had to go low. No, it didn't. It didn't work like that this time. The other line could get a run and you couldn't just maintain the field like you could in past years. People were able to make moves and make passes, and it was really fun to watch. I'll get to that in a second. I want to I don't want to, but I do want to. I love NASCAR, but I hate some of the decisions that they've made and some of the things that they do, just because it's so cringy. The charter system being the biggest of them. But Kevin, did you see on Twitter a couple days ago? One of the NASCAR beat reporters put out a picture from the fan council, a questionnaire.
When Matt Weaver posted?
Yes, Matt Weaver. He's the one who posted it. They asked the NASCAR fan council a couple of questions, and it was so slanted that you couldn't answer in a negative way unless you wrote at the bottom saying what was negative. It was just like multiple choice questions where they're like, one of the examples is, for each of the following pairs, please select the option that would be more exciting to you. And then they give you less side-by-side racing with more horsepower, or more side-by-side racing with less horsepower. Like, I don't see how the correlation is there. Like, just give me the option less side-by-side racing or more side-by-side racing. And then give me the options under that, more horsepower or less horsepower. I guarantee you everybody would click more side-by-side racing and more horsepower, because that's what people want. And the two aren't correlated, and I don't understand why they try to make it that way. They have these slanted questions. Like, of course people are going to choose the option that say they want more side-by-side racing.
Right.
It just comes with the connotation that means less horsepower. So then NASCAR can go out there and validate that people like what they're seeing out there. And that's just not the case. It's not the truth. It's slanted in the way that makes them look good about their decisions when it's just not the case. And I feel like between the charter system and between the current car that we have at a lot of the races that we've been at this year, the racing has been superb at a lot of these places, and especially at Daytona this past weekend. But it's not the future. It's not what we should be looking for. We're just putting a bow on a pig at this point. Yes, we're making it better, but it's not. We shouldn't try to be making something that's bad less bad. We should be trying to make something completely new that's good. And it just seems like we're not trying to do that. It just seems like NASCAR's just trying to find the easiest, cheapest way to just make it seem better for everybody. And I gotta give them credit that a lot of the races this year have been miles better than they have been in past years. But I'm so sick and tired of turning on the radio and everybody defending NASCAR like, oh, well, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened. We finally got, people passing for the lead, and we got these statistics to show it. And no, we've got more fans. We got 8 out of 10 fans that love the package. That's not true. That's slanted. That's fake news. It's fake news, and I hate it.
I believe the term you're looking for, or the phrase, is confirmation bias. They're basically creating their own confirmation bias. And when I saw that, I just wasn't surprised, because you got these yes men like Steve O'Donnell who are saying this is exactly what we're looking for. Yeah, we're looking for wide open racing at Kansas. We love wide open racing at Chicagoland. It's like, what? You are? That's what you want? I guarantee you, if you asked 10 fans, do you want wide open racing at every single mile-and-a-half track? They would go, well, no, I want high speed. I want them to go 200 miles an hour into the corner. And I want these guys to be battling side by side, because they're all on top of each other, because they're racing really hard. And what we have now is basically, hey, do you want Talladega every week? Hey, do you want Daytona 2008 every week? Because that's what we'll give you. Oh, by the way, there's a ton of Darrow push everywhere, and it's not very good for the actual racing. But multi-groove racing works, and we can kind of hide the horrible package with really good racing at these tracks that support it. Because, man, if you go and watch Dover, man, that was the best race ever, right? Except, no, it wasn't. It was one of the worst races I've ever seen. I fell asleep during it. So it's like, when I saw that, I wasn't surprised. NASCAR has their heads shoved so far up their own interests. And they what they want is what they want. And at this point, I was excited for the 2021 car, the Gen 7. I'm starting to become a little bit concerned that what we're basically going to have is a Pikes Peak hill climb car with an ass ton of damn drag, and we're going to see super speedway racing everywhere, which I love. Super speedway racing is fun. Super speedway racing is always fun. What more could you want? It's exciting. But it should be only excited at 2 places. It should not be everywhere. And I don't know where they're getting this. If that's where they're getting this, and then the questions are asked that way, it's like, well, no. of course I want more side by side racing. I'm not dumb, but I also see what they're doing. And it's like, well, what would you rather have? Would you rather be struck by lightning or would you drown for 30 minutes? Okay, well, I'd rather be struck by lightning, but it doesn't mean I want to be struck by lightning. It's like, come on, it's just ridiculous.
You know what I
It,
want? I want to talk about racing. What do you think?
let's talk about racing. Let's talk about the actual 400 because I was there. It was hot. I'm sunburned. I look like a lobster. If you want to pull up my Facebook picture and put it on the actual YouTube and show me roasted like a damn lobster, do it. But I enjoyed the race while it was going green. I really did.
It was absolutely fantastic. Looking at the lead changes that we had, Joey Logano started on the pole, but Kyle Busch got the lead. But then Joey Logano, but then Kyle Busch, and they were kind of swapping back and forth. And we had a little bit of a tandem going on there. Logano and Harvick, and then Busch and Hamlin. They were kind of pushing each other past one another. They'd kind of broken away from the rest of the pack, and you could see the cowl flaps like going up on both Harvick and Hamlin's cars, and everybody was so close together, and I guess trying to make things work that way that some cars actually lost the cowl flaps because they were trying so hard to push people, going forward. We had that going for the first stage, which ended on lap 50. Kevin Harvick had ended up, I believe he won the stage. No, it was Logano. Logano won the stage.
Logano passed him in the last lap.
That's right. Harvick had the lead, and then Logano pulled out a line and was able to pass him, which you wouldn't normally have seen that at, past races. Normally, Harvick would just had to have, like, moved down a little bit, and then the bubble would have just blocked Logano. Like, it wouldn't have been Harvick, it would have been the bubble. But Logano was able to pull out a line. He had Stenhouse right behind him, and they were able to go on to win the first stage, which first stage definitely gives a thumbs up from me because you had that crazy racing between those two, Logano and Busch, at the beginning. Busch ended up falling back. I don't think he finished in the top 10 in stage one. Him and Hamlin, I guess they were having some team communication issues where Hamlin didn't want to work together with his teammate for whatever reason, so he kept pulling out a line and going back into the other line. But it was fun. It was. I felt like the first stage was definitely a lot better than we had seen in the past. Then stage two, we had a lot of great racing as well. Not as much passing, I would say, because you got those Chevys that came up front. And so you had Austin Dillon, you had Alex Bowman, then you had William Byron and Chase Elliott all hooked up. But you saw other cars trying to get up there. You saw Clint Bowyer and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. trying to get up there, and they just didn't have the help, which that happens. You can't fault anybody for that except for the drivers for not trying to push them. Chevy just had a lockdown on that line and pushing each other forward. The Heinlein just couldn't get formed, and I mean there was an effort, and there was definitely almost Bowyer got pretty close. I think he got up to like third, but he just didn't have the help there at the end, and Austin ended up going on to win that stage. And then stage three, the final stage, they're racing to the weather at this point, so it's just absolutely nuts. And you get the big one at lap 118. I don't know. I wanna point fingers at both sides there because it felt like Austin was definitely trying to. I don't want to say block, but he was trying to defend, and Bowyer was not having it and wasn't lifting and was trying to get the lead as best as he could there, and just the two ideals clashed, and we ended up having one of the absolute biggest wrecks that I've ever seen in my life. It was absolutely insane, the amount of carnage that was in that incident.
It was the racing was great, and as far as that goes, 100% Austin Dillon's fault because basically threw Boyer all the way to the yellow line. And where's Boyer going to go? But you can't go under it; he'll get penalized. So
But you didn't see the contact that happened just before that. Like Boyer had run into the back of him. It didn't. You didn't see that part.
no,
That's what
oh
I
god,
saw
is
at
my button's
least.
working? No, it looked like because of Boyer going down, and as Austin went down, he got in the back of him, got loose, and then he turned him again. So I mean, I put that 100% on the reaction of Dylan. So, uh, but regardless, the racing was fantastic. I mean, the move Menard and I think it was Hamlin right behind him did go making it three wide for the lead, and then Hamlin throws it down on the exit of the tri-oval and takes the lead away from Menard. That's the racing that I was looking forward to all day, and I knew with this whole manufacturer thing where you got to work with your Chevy guys, you got to work with the Ford guys. I knew that there was going to be some parading, which they did for most of the first and second stage, with Dylan leading stage two and Logano leading a lot of stage one. I knew that that was going to be an issue, and I hope they stop that because that's the only reason why the racing hasn't been 10 out of 10. They've kind of just settled in behind one another. But still, man, what more could you ask for on a plate package? They can pass. They can finally pass the leader, and I think these guys are going to have to learn that over the next last two races. We've seen that blocking doesn't necessarily work like it used to. I mean, you saw what happened to Byron in practice. I mean, obviously that was a little bit different, but the closing rate is there, and the second place guy can get to the leader. And then we saw what happened to Stenhouse, where it was interesting because he blocked Kurt, and then I guess he got tight, and then tried to go down a second time, and then just turned himself. But it's weird because I'm excited about it, not because they're getting wrecked, but because the leader isn't necessarily calling the shots of the parade as we've seen back since 2013 with the inception of the Gen 6, where the leader can stall out an entire run. It's actually, I'm really excited for Talladega now, just because I know they're going to start figuring out, and I think the lead changes are going to start ramping up. We had 24 lead changes in not even a full race. That's pretty impressive. I think Talladega is going to get better because I think these guys realize that uh, it takes a lot to get up front because the runs are really really strong, but everyone's all on top of each other, and I think it's going to be a matter of staying up front and biding your time to get to the lead because anyone can pass for the lead at any point, it seems like now, if you're in the top five. And that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing at these super speedways because I hated when someone could just stay up in front and just basically play pace car for 100 laps under green. So one thing we can take away from this is that the racing has definitely improved significantly because of this 9-inch spoiler with the wicker bill and the huge increase in horsepower. I think it's a huge improvement. I think it's just going to get better from here on out.
And it's not like the spoilers making it any easier to drive. They were complaining, not I wouldn't say complaining, but they were saying throughout the race that it was difficult to go out and still make some of the moves, and people were getting tight, and there was a lot of aero push that was seemingly going on during the race. I also look forward to Talladega because I feel like because it's a little bit bigger and a little bit wider of a track than Daytona is, that it's going to give these drivers a lot more opportunity to make a lot more crazy moves. And I think what we had at Daytona was great. I just wish we had. I honestly just wanted to see the race finish. I wanted to see it play out. I want to see, because I mean they were, the big one happened, and then you were thinking like we said before, there was like 6 competitive cars that were left. Those 6 cars were going to go absolutely bananas because they were going to be able to make a lot more crazy moves and not have to worry about somebody filling a hole. And they wouldn't have to worry about falling back so far either. They'd be able to go like, hell, they could have gone like 6 wide if they wanted to, if we would have gone back racing, and we didn't get that, unfortunately. But for what we got, it was great. I loved it. Big thumbs up. I'll give the big thumbs up to NASCAR. I know we shit on them a lot during this episode, and we kind of shit on them a lot throughout a lot of our podcasts. But
And I'm not going to apologize for it. Get your shit together, NASCAR. I'm sorry.
for what we got at Daytona and the super speedway package that we got, that's plateless, I think it's an absolute win. And if we have something like this next year and going forward, I think that we will continue to have some really good restrictor plate, or can't say restrictor plate, some really good super speedway racing. Yes.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, that's one thing we can take away from this week is that they figured out plate racing. That's what it is. I mean, sorry. But they know what to do now. I do wish they got rid of that bumper extension because once again, I'm a huge fan of the tandem, and I know that bumper extension on the rear bumper prevents the car from getting that extra suck and that extra push when they're on top of each other. I don't quite know the physics of it, but I think it has something to do with the fact that the air underneath the car goes to the spoiler, and once the guy's on the back bumper, no longer is on the spoiler. So I think that's why. I'm not 100% sure, but I wish they'd get rid of that because I think if they got rid of that, the racing would be just ridiculous. Because even though they can tandem, the side drafting component is so strong in these Gen 6 cars that I think it would still break it up. But that's there's no way they'll do that. For some reason they hate these tandems as much as I love them. But NASCAR likes to do a bunch of stuff that I don't like, so I don't think they're going to start doing anything different from there. Once again, and I hate to go back to a negative topic, I just don't get why they would throw the caution with do the one to go. Like, I get it, the timing was really bad, but like I don't get why they would do that. I don't get why they would start the race so late. I don't get why they would do a lot of the things they did on Sunday. Just a really weird event. Overshadowed a really good race. 120 laps of really good racing, and once stage 3 started, there was a bunch of lead changes, like 7 or 8 lead changes in about 20 laps. And what more can you ask for? With the way the race was about to pan out, and then Austin Dillon decided to throw a huge block, and you can't blame him. The way the racing has been the last 5-6 years, you have no other option but to block, or you go from the lead to they'll punch you all the way back to 30th, and you can't have that at these super speedways. So I mean, you can't fault him, you can't fault Stenhouse for blocking either. So like I said before, very bizarre weekend, overshadowed by a lot of controversial topics and a lot of feel-good moments between Ross and Justin Haley, mired by some crazy storylines and crazy controversy that honestly NASCAR. I understand why NASCAR wanted that race to get going again, because you cannot, you can't go, all right, we have a guy or a team that's buying one of our charters, which is a flawed system as it is, making profit off of it by not really trying, winning one of our high 5 races. Cool, sweet.
Yeah, definitely a weird way to wrap up the last 4th of July weekend that we're going to have at Daytona.
It sucks. Why are they doing this to me?
I know. It'll be at Indy next year, and hopefully they see the error of their ways and they move it back in 2021. But I think it might not happen in 2021, maybe in 2022. That probably would be the earliest that we could hope for it to come back. I mean, they did move Darlington from a time away from Labor Day weekend, and I think they realized their mistake on that and brought it back. So never say never. Hopefully they realize their mistake a lot sooner than anything else. But I'm going to take away from this weekend that we had really 2 really good winners for the sport in Ross Chastain and Justin Haley. I'm going to try and forget the bad parts of it, and I'm looking forward to Kentucky this weekend because they got the new aero package there, and pretty much at every track where the old aero package would have made the racing suck, the new aero package has made it, actually pretty decent. So I look forward to Kentucky. We got our first taste of Kentucky with the new package tonight in the iRacing Peak Antifreeze series, iRacing series, and even though it's it's on a computer, it's still gonna give
Also
us
old Kentucky.
it is old Kentucky. Ew, sad. Regardless, though, we still should get some type of feel for what we might see on Saturday night from what these pro drivers are doing on the computer. Then I think we got all. Do we have all three series at Kentucky again? Like, I think we got Trucks on Thursday night, Xfinity on Friday night, and Cup on Saturday night, I want to say.
I thought they weren't going to do that anymore, but man, they keep doing it. So let me just double check. While I look, I think they made a good decision. I think Pacras made the news public yesterday. But they're going to bring the PJ1 across the entire track other than the bottom line. And I think that track needs it because with the exception of a couple of drivers making it work last year, the high line was pretty much non-existent at Kentucky. And they're going to bring it to Pocono as well. And I think that track needs it in the worst way because I think Pocono is one of those tracks in Indy, or the two tracks that I don't think they're going to do it for Indy. No one is allowed to touch Indy with anything but put tires on the track. So, but Pocono with the extra PJ1 is going to increase the racing entertainment value, I think, tenfold. And I think it was a really good move for them to do it at Kentucky because 1 and 2 is 20 degrees, I believe, 18 or 20, one of those values. And they're going to be pretty much going wide open through there. So if they can get the second, and maybe even third groove going, that's a good thing because they'll be able to just go wide open. And then 3 and 4 is still the conventional 14. And the one thing that's weird about this track, they repaved it, but the character is still there. There's a lot of bumps in 3 and 4 still. There's a lot of bumps on the front stretch too. So I'm curious to see if that PJ1 really gets that second groove going. And if they can get it going, I think it's going to be one of those things where it's going to look like a conventional race from like what we saw last year, but they're obviously going to be a little bit closer. So the only thing we can do is wait and see. I'm excited for tonight though because Kentucky's one of those tracks where skill really comes into play. It's not wide open. It's not going to be wide open, and setup's going to be really important for these guys to nail because it's really bumpy and it's really treacherous on the bottom. So they're going to have to negotiate where they're going to go, if they're going to want to run high or want to run low. So I'm excited for tonight on a Tuesday. I'm excited for Peak, and then I'm excited for what Kentucky is going to deliver with the PJ1 and with the new surface and the new package.
It is all three series. They, like I said, Trucks on Thursday, Xfinity on Friday, and Cup on Saturday. All night racing. So nighttime, right time, like we've continued to reiterate. So definitely gonna be looking forward to that. Hopefully we can steer clear of weather. I got to see if my buddy Matt Corson's going up there because it seems every weekend that he heads up to the track to cover it, he's covering it now for kicking the tires, and it seems like every week since he's started with KTT that he's been at the track, there's been some type of weather delay in some form or fashion. So hopefully I don't want to say hopefully he's not going, but hopefully his curse breaks if he does go to Kentucky. Hopefully there's no weather. But Kevin, hey, you got anything else that you want to add for tonight?
Probably for the best because, man, I'm sick of cussing and I'm sick of slandering NASCAR. It's been one of those weeks where I'm just tired and I got sunburn on me. And I'm frustrated because once again, rain literally ruined my parade of a weekend. I'm tired. It's a good way to end it. I got some stuff off my chest, and we're on to Kentucky.
Yeah, it felt like a good therapy session tonight. So we love NASCAR. Anyway, let's sign off here. Pretty decent episode. Don't forget to check us out. If you're checking us out on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to us. We're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Google Play Music, and we're on Spotify as well. For Kevin McAdams, I'm Justin Melillo. Everybody have a wonderful week, and we'll talk to you next week.
Goodbye.